Hey everyone, my name is Josh Proctor, and this is the Life on Side B podcast. On this podcast, we are going to discuss, as the name pretty much clearly states, what life as Side B LGBT Christians is really like. For those of you who don't know, Side B is a term used to refer to Christians who are LGBT, attracted to the same sex, or have gender dysphoria, yet hold a traditional view of sexuality in marriage, and therefore live according to that view. Every episode, I will be talking with different Side B Christians about different aspects of their life, faith, and experiences. My goal with this podcast is to show that being Side B is not this depressing life of self-hatred and loneliness, but rather, it can be pretty dang beautiful and amazing. Now, every season, we will be focusing on a different theme of sexuality and faith issues related to the lives of Side B Christians. This season, though, I am really excited because we are going to be looking at different ways Side B Christians live out their sexuality and find intimacy and community. I hope that through this season, you will be able to see that there are so many different ways that Side B Christians can live with joy within their faith. I am really excited for today because we're going to be doing something a little bit different than normal, and we have a very special co-host with us. Today, you're actually going to be learning more about me, really, and how I have found community and belonging within my family and my group of friends. So with that, let's head into the episode for today. Hello everyone, welcome again to episode 3 of Life on Side B. Oh, I'm so excited for this because today I have one of my best friends joining us, Michelle Newbold. Hi, Michelle.
Hi.
So this is going to be really fun because first of all, we're not doing this over Zoom. Second of all, so we get to be in the same room together. Second of all, to give a little bit of an introduction to Michelle. Michelle is a friend of mine. We've known each other for how many years?
I think it's been like 3.5 years. I think you and I have known each other for 3.5 years.
3.5 years. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, that's a long time. I mean, it's not like a long time, but it's longer than I was thinking.
Yeah.
Anyway, we've been friends for a long time. And we are actually in the process of opening a church plant together as co-pastors.
So exciting.
Oh, this is so exciting to be able to do this together as we prepare to do the other side of everything. So the fun part about all of this is Michelle is not LGBT.
Nope.
And some of you might be wondering why that is. And that's because this episode's going to be actually a little bit different than what we normally do. I'm not going to be interviewing Michelle, and we're not going to be necessarily interviewing anyone. I've been talking with a few people, and I got a good suggestion from people listening to the podcast that it would be really good to do an episode kind of introducing me, and so that you all can get to know me a little bit.
Woo!
And since I really didn't feel like just talking into a microphone by myself for an hour, I asked Michelle to come on and so that we could talk about it together.
I'm excited to get to know you again, Josh.
I know, right? Like you don't know me
Nope.
enough already.
Not at all.
And the other exciting thing is actually Michelle is going to be coming with me to Revoice this year.
Yes. I'm so excited for
Right?
Revoice. Yes.
What are you most excited about?
I think for me, really, I'm the most excited about learning because I'm not part of the LGBT world, as Josh explained. So I'm really just kind of looking forward to being surrounded by people that I can learn from.
Yeah.
I think I grew up as a conservative Christian in a very conservative household, and so the LGBT world still kind of makes me a little uncomfortable in some ways. Like, I'm very comfortable around a lot of people, but in some ways it's still, I don't necessarily know how to act around.
It's new.
Exactly. So, and really just this whole world has opened up to me just through knowing you.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm really excited just to kind of learn and get out of my comfort zone and be able to experience, or maybe not experience, but like, be surrounded by LGBT people for 4 days straight.
I know. I'm so excited. I'm excited that this year you're going and another one of our friends is going, and there's a few other people that I know that are coming for the first time, so I'm really excited. Not let alone just me going myself, because that's exciting in and of itself. Okay, well, actually, we are going to start today off with a new segment called, are you ready for this?
I am ready for this.
The new segment is called Dear Straight People.
Oh, no.
I thought, in honor of having Michelle with us today, it would be a perfect time to launch this segment.
Yes.
So, I have asked a few people that I know for their best fun or serious short letters to straight people. What would, especially side B or all LGBT people, like to let straight people know, especially straight Christians?
Yes.
Let's see. Okay, so the first one, I love this one, and so the other thing is that I'm not going to be mentioning names because I forgot to ask everyone if I can mention their name. So if you sent one in, I really apologize, and I love you dearly. So this is the first one, and I'm totally going to be adding in these clap emojis, which is, Dear Straight People, I will not be your gay best friend.
Except you're my gay best friend.
Well, okay, so someone commented that, and they were like, but I'll be your gay best friend. And it's just true and not true at the same time. I mean, like, I totally understand the essence of that, of like being pursued at just so someone can have a gay best friend. But yes, I am your gay best friend.
That's kind of true though, because like sometimes when I was in high school, I used to see gay people and I'd be like, I want a gay best friend.
Right. And you got one.
I did. It only took like 5 years after high school.
5 years.
But...
I know. All right, so here's another one. Dear Straight Pastor, give me 1 week and I will increase your church's offering tenfold by helping you get your life together, starting with your Sunday attire. Your lady will thank me. Which is also not untrue. I'm just saying.
I mean, where's the lie in that, though?
I know. But like, well, I mean, unless you're like some mega church. I mean, I'm sorry. But they've got... Have you seen that new Instagram page where this guy looks at videos of pastors and he finds how much... No, I'm not joking. There's an Instagram page. Someone please help me find the handle for this because it's amazing. I can't remember what it is. But this guy looks at pastor sermons and he finds where they got their clothes from and posts how much their clothes are, and it'll be like, Stephen Furtick's shoes are worth $300. and I know like he explains that a lot of these things are like gifts to pastors from like members of their churches, but it's just really funny, like, oh, this pastor's wearing these like really nice shoes or this really nice jeans. So I mean, hey, but absolutely in many churches. And then this is another one of my favorite ones. Dear straight men, you're not my type. Followed by, Dear straight men, even if I do have feelings for you, I can't control myself. That's actually, when I do like talks on LGBT stuff, that's normally a question I get a lot from straight people.
Really?
Is like, well, what do I do if they like me? And normally my thing is, well, first of all, gay people have like self-control. Second of all, don't worry unless you like them. I mean, like...
I mean, I guess that's true, yeah.
I mean, I don't know. Did you ever feel that way? Like maybe with girls?
Sometimes, yeah.
Yeah, which I understand. It's just...
Yeah, especially if they were a little more, like, flamboyant in a way. Because, I don't know, that was just always something where I think that's part of the discomfort a little bit from when I was growing up, was I was always like, well, are they going to have a crush on me? Do I need to be careful? But then, I'm just like, whatever, they're people.
Yeah, exactly. Now we get into a little bit more of serious ones. I mean, this one just is like all-encompassing. Dear straight people, can I live?
Absolutely not.
Oh my gosh. No, it's so true. I mean, I totally get that. Sometimes you just get so annoyed and you're just like...
It's like, can you just be
let
yourself?
Me alone. Can you leave me alone, please?
I know. I mean, like, sometimes I feel like that also, not for myself, but for the LGBT world, because like I said, my family's very conservatively Christian, and so sometimes I'm just like, can you just leave people alone and let them do their own thing? They're not hurting you, so leave them alone.
Let them do their thing.
Exactly.
Yes. Oh, and here's another one. And this is one that I really wanted to hear you comment on, which was, dear straight women, please stop saying that it's such a shame when an attractive man is gay. Men do not exist for your consumption any more than you exist for theirs. Ooh. Okay. How true. Okay.
I mean, sadly, I've thought this many, many, many times because I'm 26 and I'm still single. And so then there'll just be like this really attractive guy. Or like I'll be at the mall and I'm surrounded by attractive men. And it's like they're all either taken or they're gay. And I'm like, there's nobody here that...
Well, like, I have to say, I have thought the same thing about straight men. So.
Okay, so at least there's that reversal.
There is reversal.
So that makes me feel a little bit better.
Yeah.
And not so materialistic.
I mean, if I'm going to be completely honest, I have thought that before about that. It's like, oh, straight, darn it. And next one. Dear straight people, I'm willing to bet that I have thought, prayed, and researched longer and more deeply about this than you have. Let me be the expert of my own experience. Oh. Yeah. Well, I honestly have felt that. I've really been frustrated about that. Like, when some people are saying, well, you should study the topic. And I'm like, yeah, like, I have a master's degree in biblical studies. I think, honestly, that's partly why I got a master's degree in biblical studies, was so that people would leave me alone being like, yeah, my conclusion, like, I legitimately thought about it.
Well, and now you're going for your doctorates.
And now I'm going for my doctorate, dear Lord.
So...
Why have you not stopped me?
Because you won't let anybody stop you. That's why you're obsessed with school.
You guys got... Okay, I'm going to share a story with all of you guys, is that So we're going to talk a little bit later about a group of friends that Michelle and I are part of that we call the Fantastic Four. Yes, we're not nerds. Obviously not nerds.
Nope, not at all.
And for a while, I was the only one in school. And I was suffering through that all by myself.
You were. It was, I felt so bad for you.
It was awful. And I finally got my master's degree. And I am not joking. August, like 2 months after I finished my master's degree, everyone announced that they were going to school. You all started together. And you're like, yay, we get to study together. And I'm like, I hate you. I just hate all of you.
But now you're getting your doctorate, so you can join us.
Now we're all studying together.
Exactly.
Okay, so then 2 more. Next one, dear straight people. Just because I say I'm gay doesn't mean I'm into the hookup scene. There is a difference between sexuality and sexual activity.
Wait, what?
But it's true. Like, I can't remember. Someone wrote a article saying something about, like, I'm tired of having to always preface when I'm, like you as a straight girl never have to tell people, oh, I'm straight. Oh, but I'm not hooking up with men. Like, in the first, like, you never have to say, I'm a celibate straight person.
No, that's true.
And I guess, like, someone wrote an article about, like, how they're really tired of, like, why do I have to put celibate in front of it when straight people don't have to do that?
Right.
But, I mean, I kind of get it because, obviously, like, the point is celibate, like, planning to never have a sexual relationship. But...
I mean, though, like, at the same time, I mean, you do get a lot of, sometimes you'll get straight people that are just, they want to dress a little more provocatively because they're very comfortable with their bodies. And so, but they're not sleeping around.
Yeah.
And so then, but because they're wearing that provocative clothing, a lot of people are just like, ooh, they must be sleeping around and, you know, doing the do with all these people.
That's true. People will
But they're not.
We just need to stop assuming people are having sex.
Just stop judging people. It's not Christian-like.
And the last one, I thought that this was a good one to end on. To whom it may concern, I love you. Regards. That's the sentiment. So,
yeah.
None of this was to make you feel bad as a straight person. I just thought it was fun to do it.
No, absolutely not.
Awesome. Okay.
I think these are funny too. So.
Right? They are really good.
Yeah.
And there's so many more. And if you sent me one and I didn't read it today... I'm probably going to read it later on, so don't worry.
We'll just write a book about Dear Straight People.
Well, for a while, I was actually thinking of making this podcast called Dear Straight People or Dear Straight Christians.
I know you were.
I was
That
thinking
was a
about it.
very serious
That
title.
was a
you
very
were
serious
thinking
title
of.
that this podcast was almost called, but then I felt it needed to be more encompassing. So, okay. All right. Well, again, this conversation, I literally have no idea how this is going to work. We're just going to talk. And the goal is that you guys can know more about me, so that as you listen to me interviewing other people, you can know who the hell is talking.
Yes, I think that's very important.
Yes. So to give you guys a little bit of a backstory, I was raised in a Christian family, very Southern Baptist Christian family. And while I would say my family was conservative, I would never put us as like freakishly conservative on anything.
No.
I mean, I was the youngest of 5, and I grew up watching Friends and Golden Girls. So
Yeah, see, that's the opposite of my family.
yeah.
And my family's conservative.
I know. But I mean, we were generally conservative. Like, we held to conservative Christian views. But growing up in the church, it's really funny because while our church was really conservative, we just never talked about homosexuality. Our church was never one that said like, "Oh, gay people are going to hell." It just was never mentioned.
Uh-huh.
And I think that mixed with that, my being the youngest of 5, like I said, and my brother was 15 years older than me. My parents, I think, got to the point where like, as long as you're not dead, you're fine. Just like go outside and play and whatever.
But I feel like that's the case with a lot of younger.
Yeah, like a lot of younger.
That's like my sister. Like I had all the strict rules because I'm the oldest of 5.
Yeah.
And then my sister, who's the youngest, was like out doing whatever she wanted as long as she wasn't, doing drugs or doing anything bad.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's the thing. And so with that, obviously, I saw a lot of gay characters on TV.
Yeah.
And no one ever responded badly. Uh-huh. So it's really funny because with those two things, I knew I was attracted to guys really early on. Mm-hmm. I didn't have a word for it, but I knew that I was drawn to guys.
Yeah.
And I thought that was normal because like you saw it on TV and no one said anything in church. And so I still remember, I can't remember how old I was, but one of my cousins, her and I are kind of like twins. I call her my twin.
Yes.
And I was with her, and I can't remember who. I think it was Justin Timberlake. Don't judge me. Justin Timberlake came on the TV.
I can't really judge you for Justin Timberlake.
I know. Justin Timberlake came on TV, and I was like, oh, I would love to marry him. And Casey was like, my cousin said, Josh, that's not normal. And I'm like, why? Like, he's cute, and I want to marry him. And that was really the first time I ever got exposed to the idea that, like, there was something wrong with me wanting to be. I didn't even know, like, I didn't know what I wanted from guys, like,
Right.
But that there was something wrong with homosexuality, something like not right as the way I was thinking about it.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't really just about being told that there was something wrong with homosexuality, but really that was the first moment where I felt like I was different and I didn't belong.
Right.
And I know that like really propelled me down trying to figure it all out. And then in school, I was about 4th grade. I was bullied a lot in school, and I had to switch schools a few times. The first time in my first school, I was called gay. And I had I was called worse things than that. I was told like God made a mistake when he made me a boy, blah, 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 all this stuff. It's fine. I've gotten over it. But the gay term, I can't remember why that stuck out. I was like, what is this term? Like, I want to go home and find it out.
Yeah, like when I remember my first experience with the term gay was just people being mean that would be like, ugh, that's so gay.
Yeah.
And like I didn't necessarily know what it was. And then somehow I ended up finding out that the original term for it meant happy like 100 years ago. So then people would be like, ugh, that's so gay. And then I'd be like, well, gay means happy, so yeah, it's gay.
That is awesome. That sounds like something you would do.
And then I ended up finding out like what it actually meant. And I'm like, oh.
I can imagine you doing that in Saudi Arabia.
Yes. That's actually probably that's where it was.
In Saudi Arabia?
Yeah.
Oh, for context, Michelle used to live in Saudi Arabia with her
from
family.
like 3rd to 5th grade.
Oh
so
my goodness.
That's about the age when you start realizing
realizing
those
that
words
stuff.
and like a lot of those words
Ooh,
start
that would have
coming
gone over
out.
bad.
So
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, luckily I was at an American school
Yeah.
with like a lot of the foreigners that were there,
Mhm.
but it was just
So
kind of funny.
That's really funny. Yeah, I mean, I don't know why that word stuck out to me, but I was like, of all the words you're calling me, this word's interesting. I'm going to go home and I'm going to look it up. I can't say Google it because Google didn't exist.
Oh, gosh.
But I looked it up. Obviously, I found porn. And my parents saw it that day. And I knew they'd seen it even though they didn't say anything. Yeah, my family's just not one that we really... Mm-hmm. We never really used to talk about that kind of stuff. So I knew that they had, and then later on, they let me know. I think it was like a year or two later. They let me know, like, hey, we saw this, and we're gonna take you to counseling. Mm-hmm. And I know a lot of people can judge, and I'm telling everyone, like, I don't judge my parents for wanting me to take. Like, it was a counselor who was, I mean, I wouldn't necessarily say it was reparative therapy, but it was along those lines mm-hmm. of like to change my sexuality. And I don't like, I've never held that against my parents.
Yeah.
At all, because they were trying to figure it out.
Yeah. And they didn't necessarily know either.
No, they didn't know. And we've had a lot of conversations since then. So
like in the 90s, yeah. I mean, there's not really anything that you can really do about that except try to figure it out.
Yeah. And so that's why I'm also saying anyone listening, you're not allowed to judge my parents because I don't judge them. So just letting you know. But they took me, and I was just really confused because I still didn't understand my whole situation, mm-hmm. Let alone trying to figure out what I'm supposed to do. And like the guy would talk about like what it means to be a man and the relationship between men and women. I'm like, dude, like I don't even understand me.
Yeah.
And so I remember finally, after pleading and pleading and pleading, I got them to, stop having me go to counseling. And for a while, we just didn't talk about it. Mm-hmm. And I just kind of dealt with it on my own. Well, over time, as I'm growing up, I went through, I came out to I really got depressed after a while. I mean, I would sleep in my closet. The irony of it. The irony. Seriously.
How old were you then?
I was in middle school.
Aww.
I was in middle school, and I would sleep in my closet just because I was so depressed, and I wouldn't eat at times. And actually, my not eating is what got me to come out the next time, because when I was on a youth trip, mm-hmm. and it was actually my brother-in-law that was my youth pastor, mm-hmm. And he was getting on me about not eating. Mm-hmm. But I was like, I'm not, because I was just so... I was a mess. And we got into like a little bit of an argument just about like, you need to eat. No, I'm not eating, that kind of stuff. And I can't remember why, but I just blurted out, I'm gay. Mm-hmm. And what I remember is that he just walked and he turned out and walked out of the room. And I'm like, great. Just great. I have told someone that I'm gay and now they're walking out. And it's my brother-in-law.
Yeah.
But that actually really honestly turned out to be good, because he later on came back, I think after kind of, processing.
Yeah.
And he really led me through a lot of just being able to talk about it, and being able to go through it. Now, he did get me involved in like Exodus Ministries, mm-hmm. which is another form of ex-gay ministries. But again, I think it's because growing up in conservative Christianity, like that's the resources that people knew of. And but obviously it was, I'm not going to say it wasn't like it was a process kind of trying to deal with that. Like, so wait, I'm gay, and this in Christianity says I'm not supposed to be gay, mm-hmm. but my attractions aren't going away. And that was a continually back and forth thing for me, I would say, throughout all of my childhood and my teenage years, of trying to figure that out. And going back and forth between ex-gay world ministries and kind of doing my own thing and dating until then. Well, and then I had my first boyfriend in high school. And again, that was all involved in all of that. But I think it was around the end of high school when I was more along the lines of just screw this. I'm so done. Mm-hmm. done.
Done trying.
I'm done trying. And, you
Yeah.
know, Christians were not always the greatest.
Mm.
And I just came to feel at that point that church was not a place that I was wanted as a gay kid.
Right.
I didn't feel accepted, and I felt more burdened than actually safe within the church walls.
Mm-hmm.
I would still go to Bible study, and I tried to act great at times for people because growing up in a Christian home. But beyond that, I dated. I had my boyfriends, and, you know, and I don't know, went through all of that.
Yeah.
But I think one of the biggest things for me is I really got into a dark place during that period of really just rejecting Christianity. And I mean, I slept around a lot. I got to a point where I really didn't know what to do. Mm-hmm. And I don't think that's, and I also don't want people to think that I'm saying that is a all-encompassing version of the non-Christian LGBT community, because it's not. That's just what I got stuck into.
Well, I think also when you're trying so hard for so long to like keep things in check, and when you're just like trying so hard to lock things down, and that's all you know, I think there also just comes a breaking point where you're just like, screw this, I am just gonna do what I want, I'm gonna like, and then you go completely 180 in a way.
Yeah.
And so it's like, then all of a sudden you go from like having such tight control over yourself to having like no control.
Yeah.
And then it's kind of like trying to find, like, coming back to where you find yourself and
well, and yeah, exactly. I think that's the biggest thing. And for me, getting to that point was one of the biggest things of bringing me back to God, of saying like, I looked around and I found myself in a really dark place. Mm-hmm. Just a really, really dark place. And knowing that faith was the only thing that was going to change that. Mm-hmm. Like, it's the only thing that was going to change it. And so I got involved in like sex addiction counseling, and really came back to God and just like, God, you know what? I'm back. I don't know what life will look like because I'm still gay, and I'm not going to pretend that I'm anything else.
Yeah.
But like, I know I can't do this without you.
Mm-hmm. I kind of love when you talk about your story, because it wasn't just like a pivotal moment where all of a sudden you're like, Jesus, I'm yours. It was kind of like a gradual releasing and surrendering to God.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that it's really true, because that first time where I'm like, okay, you know what? I need God in my life. I still had stipulations.
Yes.
It's like, I'm never moving outside the country. I'm never working in a ministry. Many different things like that.
Yes.
But it was a gradual way of just being able to know more and more about my understanding, my need for God. And that was really the first step, was saying, God, I'm in this dark hole. I need you to get me out of it. And so I got out of that kind of like hooking up, like cycle that I was in.
Right.
But I was a side A Christian. Like, that's what I was like, you know what? I still want a husband. I want this life.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to give that up.
Yeah.
And so for me, that was a very big part. And that actually led me to, I kept dating. I had a few different boyfriends, and then I ended up dating one guy. And we had a great relationship. I mean, honestly, I actually didn't want to date him when we started, but he convinced me. He was amazing. And our relationship got really serious, and I really, really liked him. And I saw a future with him, and kind of being able to see, you know what, maybe with him, my dreams of being able to have the house, the family, the husband, this can all possibly happen with him.
Yeah.
Maybe he didn't see that, but I did. And, in the middle of this relationship is when I had a friend who lived in another city, and a mutual friend of ours was coming down to visit him. And when I found out that our mutual friend was visiting him, I had told my boyfriend, I said, hey, I want to go over and see them. And we're about like 2 hours away. Mm-hmm. And I just want to go see my friend that's in town. Well, he didn't like the idea necessarily because the guy's ex-gay. But the friend whose house the other friend was going to was ex-gay. And I was like, well, I'm going to go. But when I went there, the one thing I loved about my friend whose house I was going to, we don't really talk anymore. We don't talk anymore. But I've always loved that even though we didn't agree on LGBT issues, he was a man of prayer. Mm-hmm. And I've always respected that about him, even to this day. Mm-hmm. I do respect that about him. And that's what drew me to him, was you could really feel God's presence on him and where he was at. Yeah. And when I entered his house, after I had driven over and I went and I visited, I walked into his house. And it was just suddenly like the Spirit of God just came over me. Mm-hmm. And you have to remember, I was raised Southern Baptist. So yeah, that's the only time in my life something like that.
And then you had just spent the last several years fighting God.
Exactly.
And then coming to this point where you're like feeling God's presence.
Yes. And so, and the best word I've ever been able to put to it is a vision. Mm-hmm. Is like, but even that, I don't know. It was just a matter of like, suddenly God was tangible. It was like an
impression.
Yeah, but almost like tangible. Mm-hmm. Almost like I could literally feel him.
Yeah.
And with that, it was, in that like vision or in that time with God, it had nothing to do with homosexuality. It was really more of a matter of God showing me what he could do with me if I gave over to him every part of my life.
Yeah.
Especially my relationship with my boyfriend. And, in it, I just remember feeling like God was saying, I can't promise you children. I can't promise you a marriage. I can't promise you these. Not that he can't. I'm not going to. Mm-hmm. But I will promise that if you follow me with these things, I will use you. Mm-hmm. And I did not tell people about this vision. I did not tell anyone. Because, people would think I was crazy. Even Christians. Like, I had a vision from God.
Yes.
Like, I am not Moses. And so I kept it quiet for a long time, just processing, like, what do I do with this? Mm-hmm. Because this will change my life.
Like,
completely.
Incredibly.
And I processed it a while. Months. I'm awful with time. Anyone who's listening who actually knows my story, if you go, hey, that timeline is off, don't judge me, because I'm awful with time. Okay. I processed it for some amount of time. And then I finally came back and I told my boyfriend, like, hey, this can't happen. Like, I love you. And I want, to be with you, but I have to follow this.
Yeah.
And I would love to say after that, life got great and all of this stuff. But the year after leaving him was the worst year of my life. Mm-hmm. And I was depressed. I was angry at God. I went through so many different emotions of feeling like, God, you've ruined my life. You've destroyed everything. Mm-hmm. Because, really God had taken away the very place where I found belonging.
Yeah.
And I feel like God knew I needed that. Mm-hmm. Like he knew I needed, like he understood that it would be hard for me to leave.
Yeah.
I really do believe that God is the most gracious being you can ever find.
Yeah.
And he understands sometimes that even when we give up things that he tells us to give up, that it's not easy.
Yeah.
And so...
Well, and I think he knew that in that time you needed to grow that strength.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like I think that God likes to use those moments where he kind of like strips us of ourselves.
Yeah.
In order to like build us back up again, more in his image and with his strength and stuff, which, you've shown even just in the last 3.5 years that I've known you.
Yeah.
And so.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
But honestly, since then, after leaving him and after going through that year of depression, I didn't know where to go. Like, side B was not something I knew about.
Right.
Of, hey, you can be gay and follow God and yet still believe in the traditional view of sexuality and marriage. Like, that was not something that I thought was an option. So I went back into the ex-gay world. I went into, different ex-gay programs and those kind of things. And then I realized it just wasn't for me. I was like, nope, I can't do this. And then after that, I went through a period where I just ignored the topic. And that was around the same time I went down to Columbia, which we'll get into a little bit. But I, while actually, in one of the programs I was in, I met a guy who was from Columbia, and he invited me down. And I'm like, hell no! Don't you know one of the things I told God is I'm not leaving this country? But he kept pressing, and I was like, fine, I'm gonna go.
Never tell God never.
Oh gosh. So he invited me down, and I went down, and I fell in love with Columbia. I just fell in love with the country, and what the church that like my friend was a part of, like what they were doing, and so I wanted to work for them. So through, I asked them if they had a job. They were like, well, we don't have money to pay you. And I was like, well, I'll volunteer for a year. And if at the end of the year, if there's a possibility for me to come on, I would like to work with you guys. And so we did that. After the year, I had a job. But during that time, I was just ignoring LGBT issues. I really didn't interact with a lot of my old friends, whether conservative, liberal, wherever they were, side A, side B, side X, ex-gay, whatever.
Yeah.
I didn't really deal with it because I didn't want to deal with the topic. All I knew is God had told me not to not to pursue a gay marriage.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, I'm just not going to do that for right now because I don't want to figure it out. And then for me, the biggest thing was Pulse happened.
Yeah.
The Pulse shooting in Orlando.
Yeah.
Obviously because I had been to, the Pulse Club before. And, there were people that I had known that were there.
Yeah.
Not like close friends or anything, but people I knew. And it was a wake-up call for me of God saying, your family's hurting. But I'm like, I am a kid in Colombia. Like, South America. What am I supposed to do?
Yeah.
And so I ignored it for a while until then. It was months, again, can't remember time to save my life, months or a year later, that I went to New York for a class in my master's program.
Yeah.
And while there, I was walking around Hell's Kitchen, which if you guys don't know Manhattan, Hell's Kitchen is a pretty predominantly gay area of Manhattan. And I was walking around and obviously seeing a lot of LGBT people. And I felt like walking around there compared to the other parts of Manhattan, I saw like barely any churches. Like at all.
Yeah.
And maybe they were there. I don't know. Maybe you're listening to this and you're from Hell's Kitchen. You're like, that's not true.
The churches were in the closet.
Maybe. They were in the closet. I love it. But it frustrated me. And I went to my professor and I shared with him my frustration. And I remember him just saying, well, they don't want it. That's why many people don't go there. I'm like, yeah, but do we say that about Muslims? Like, hey, we're not going to go to Iraq and Iran or whatever country, I don't know, like a Muslim country. We're not going to go because they don't want the gospel. And I'm like, that argument makes no sense.
No.
At all. Like, all people need the gospel, whether they think they do or not. And so that was really what spurred me on. And
I think that even gets into the whole rejection thing of like, well, if I go into this community, then I'm going to get rejected because clearly they're living a lifestyle away from God. So why would I go there? But then, like, those are the communities that God calls us to the most.
Exactly.
Is like even the Muslim world, which, I mean, even still in America, we're still dealing with prejudices towards Muslims.
Yeah.
And so it's like, well, God called us to preach the gospel to all people, not just the people that we want or the people that seem kind of close to God.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of like the whole thing I always talk about with Samaria.
Yeah.
Of how I personally believe, and you can have a different view than I do, but in Acts, when Jesus says that you will be my witnesses in Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, and to the ends of the earth, a lot of people always take those four as geography references, like farther and farther away. I don't think that Samaria is in that list for geography purposes.
No.
I really believe that Jerusalem, Judea, and the ends of the earth are there for geography purposes. I do think, though, that he adds Samaria strategically to say, these people that you hate, because the Jews hated Samaritans and felt that there was no hope for them to be close to God. Even though, in a way, like we've learned from Jesus' interactions with the Samaritan woman, like they did have some kind of connection with God. But he was like, this people that you hate, they need the gospel too. Like they need God too. So don't forget them. Right. And I always feel like that reference is there even to remind us that you are my witnesses in your town, in your country, to the ends of the earth, but also to the people that you don't like.
Yeah. Well, and I think that was kind of a good reminder for you also of just like you were kind of ignoring that huge part of yourself for those couple of years or whatever it was. But then, with the Pulse shooting and with walking around in an area where there's no churches, God was kind of like, but, these are kind of like modern day Samaritans and you're ignoring them. Yeah. And so I feel like that could have been God just being like, there's these people that you are specifically designed to minister to. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I feel like that was the biggest thing for me, was just a wake up call of like, I need to do something. Yeah. And that moved me into then really going, okay, if I'm going to do something, I have to figure out what I believe and what I'm going to do. And that really led me on to a whole nother thing of like self-discovery of myself, which really is what led me to Side B. Like I met other Side B people. I got involved in Side B ministries, and because the church in Columbia, I had been like, we need to do something. And they're like, what? And I'm like, I don't know, but we have to do something now. And they're like, well, do a workshop. And I'm like, sure, I'll do it.
Why not?
I don't know what to do. Okay. And so I put something together. They loved it. And they were like, okay, we want to do more. And I mean, remember, this is not the States. This is Colombia. Yeah. Which is years behind in some ways on these topics. And then I was like, well, if we want to do more of like to reach the LGBT community and to make our churches safe for LGBT people, then I need to get equipped. Like I need, to do that. Yeah. And so then obviously that led me to go get trained, and it all kind of led me to really this whole thing of just trying to figure out who I am, accepting, okay, I am gay or same-sex attracted. I really don't care about terminology. I don't really have a preference over either one, though I normally just use gay because it's the common term. Right. It's just, I won't use it around people that are offended by it. Right. Because I know that people are offended by it. And so that kind of has all led me onto a thing of how to figure out my own, like trying to figure out my own community and where I belong, which has been a journey of itself that I'm still on. And, trying to figure out, I mean, that's one of the things that I'm learning from this whole season is from Meg and Melinda and the people that, we're going to be hearing later on mixed orientation marriages, celibate partnerships, adoption, family. But personally, me, at least to this point in my life, the place that I found the most community has been, I would say, in 3 places. So I would say that the first place that I found community is in my biological family. And I don't think that this is necessarily just a gay thing. Like, I think we all sometimes have a hard time finding community in our family. Yes. I know that you can relate to that. Yeah. And but it's been a process, of talking with my parents, talking with my siblings, and at times feeling like they're never going to understand. But it's one of those things where you have to understand the limits of where they're going to get, like it takes time. You have to have that patience. But also, I've been very blessed with the way of being able to have a family that loves me, and is willing to walk with me, even if they don't agree with me. I'm not saying that my whole family agrees with everything that I believe or everything that I do, But the one thing I do love about my biological family has been that we have always, and this is not just my immediate family, but my extended family, our family has always been based on this understanding of we are stuck together, whether you like it or not.
Yeah.
And no matter if we disagree, we disagree. But that doesn't change the fact that we belong together.
Right.
And for me, that has been a huge point of being able to sit down with my family and say, listen, I am going to be more open as gay, and I'm going to go into this ministry. And to have literally my siblings say, you know what? We're here for you.
Yeah.
Even if we don't agree with things, we're here for you.
Right.
And I feel like that's something that's missing for so many LGBT people, that I also kind of wanted to cover it because there's not many people that I meet who are LGBT that would say, I have a great relationship with my family on this topic.
Right.
You know, whereas I feel in many ways I can talk to my family about these topics and to open up to them about these things. And so, and it's something that I cherish because I know it's not common.
Right.
So I would say that's the first one. The second one is my adopted family, which is something that throws a lot of people off, is because, my brother, I'm trying to think of how to explain it. So my brother, him and I will go places and we will say, oh, hi, we're brothers. And I love looking at people's faces because we're not biological brothers.
No.
He's Latino.
Look the same.
No, he's Latino.
Yes.
And I am white. White. And so it's really funny when people hear that we're brothers and they're like, wait, what? And I think that people always wonder, like, what's going on? But for us, we're legitimate brothers. And so to explain a little bit, who I'm talking about is actually my friend who I met before, who brought me down to Columbia. We have since then, being able to work together and walking through a whole mess of really getting where we are today. God has really blessed that I have been able to be incorporated into his family as one of the kids.
Yeah.
And in many ways, in both ways, I have been incorporated into his family. He's been incorporated to my family.
Which also isn't normal.
Isn't normal.
No.
At all. And especially the fact of that we were so close friends, and then to really move into, like, I see him as a brother.
Yeah.
And I see...
You bicker like brothers. Oh my gosh.
It's true, we do. And not just him, but like his other brother, who I count as my brother.
Yeah.
Our two sisters, his parents, I call them on Mother's Day. I call them on Father's Day. I get their advice like parents. Yeah. We all go on vacations together.
Yeah.
And it's something that I didn't know was so amazing until it happened. And it happened so naturally.
It's like one of those things where you didn't know you needed it till you had it. And then you're like, I needed this.
Yeah, I needed this because in some ways, the things that I've learned from being in that family and that I've been able to bring to like my biological family here, and the same with Ed being in my biological family and being able to take to my adopted family.
Yeah.
And so this kind of connection of this fusion between the two families has been something that has been amazing for me, has given me a community that I truly cherish, even when they drive me insane, because they do. I
think that even kind of touches on the whole aspect of having a spiritual family, because it's like we hear so much in churches, like, oh, you have a spiritual family, you've got spiritual parents and spiritual brothers and spiritual sisters, but then on, like, just because of the American culture, we're so independent that we don't necessarily know what that looks like.
Yeah. And
so then being able to see an example where that's played out, and it's played out beautifully, is like really cool to see just on the outside view from like my kind of perspective, just because it's cool to see like that's a spiritual family. That's what spiritual family actually is supposed to look like. And it's like you said, the like it's not necessarily something that you knew that you needed until you had it, but like but I think it's even looking at it is like you don't necessarily know that that's what that's supposed to look like until you see it.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's the same thing with our group of friends.
Yes.
Like, so with the Fantastic Four
Yeah.
and the Sensational Six.
Yes.
So we have Fantastic Four where there's 4 of us. And then we kind of incorporated 2 more people.
So now it's like the Sensational Six.
The Sensational Six. Why are we such nerds that we come up with this?
I don't know. And you know what's funny is like I feel like you and I have also been big parts in naming.
In the naming. Yeah. Well, because you're the Marvel fan and I'm like
And
the
you're
fantasy,
Lord
of the Rings, Game of Thrones fan. But I mean, I think it's the same way with that. Like, our whole group of friends is not something I would have ever expected because we're all so different.
Yes.
And yet, I feel like we all play together really, really well.
And that's
like,
another thing where it's like you, what was I just gonna say? I don't know. I don't remember what I was gonna say.
That's okay.
Sorry.
But no, I mean, it's like, it's funny that how the 4 of us met.
Mm-hmm. And that was like just kind of happenstance because like you and I met and you knew Ed. And then somehow Ed
did you know Daly? No.
I knew I knew Daly.
Me. Oh, you knew Daly.
I knew Daly. And then it was like Ed, it was like we all kind of like met separately and then somehow came together.
Exactly. Yeah, well, because you knew Daly and I had known you.
Yeah.
And Ed obviously knew me and Ed knew Daly. And then we like all came together.
Yeah.
But I think it's something that's, for me, has also been so beautiful in the understanding of that. So many times we think our friends, we need to search for people that are like us.
Yeah.
And I think that there is a place for that. And there's obviously things that I share with you in common. There's things that I share in common with Ed or with Daly or Ryan or Amanda.
Yeah.
But even with our similarities, each of us is so extremely different.
Yes.
And yet I feel like we don't live together. We're not this intentional community that I don't know if we could live together.
But I mean, like, we are kind of intentional because we have a group chat. And so we're always on the group chat. We're always like...
And every week we're getting together. We intentionally get together. And, and we may not all get to 6 get together at the same time all the time.
Yeah.
But many times, we do when we can,
Right.
And I think for me, those 3 groups have been... So my biological family, adopted family, and our circle of friends have been the big 3 community groups that have gotten me through so much.
Right.
I don't think I would be at this point in my life if I didn't have community in those 3 circles.
Right.
And worked to commit them. Now, the one thing that the other thing I want to say with that is, and this kind of, I feel is connected to the whole conversation on community and belonging, which is that just because I'm saying like, that's great community does not mean I don't ever get lonely.
Right.
And does not mean that you guys and my family and the adopted family meet all of my needs.
Right.
Because first of all, I don't think that would be healthy.
No.
Second of all, no community, not even romantic relationship, no community group, no church, no family can meet everyone's needs.
Yeah.
You're always going to have points when you feel lonely.
Right.
And so I don't want people to think that what I'm saying is, oh, with this, my life is perfect and I never want for anything.
Right.
But that's not the case.
Right. I think that, we get into this whole habit of being social and we have so many different groups and stuff. And so it's easy to be like, oh, my family is amazing, so they're everything. Or I think a lot of people try to have a lot of different friend groups, but then we kind of find that point where they don't meet our needs. And I feel like those are the moments where it's like, that's when God's like, but I should be the one filling your needs. And I think that's just so important. I think having a good group of friends, and because even just for me as a single straight woman, it gets hard for me sometimes. I get lonely and I deal with just wondering, do my friends even like me? Am I ever gonna find someone dealing with those questions? But having those different groups of friends and having just a strong community around me where I can be like, hey, I'm struggling with this. Can y'all pray for me? Mm-hmm. I think that's a huge thing that is not a lot of people are scared to have, but it's so important.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's so true because it's a few months ago, I think for your birthday, when we went out.
Yeah.
And we had that conversation. Like, we were all hanging out and asking Ryan why he hates us. Which none of you get that joke, and it's fine. But we were asking him why he hates us. And then we got into a conversation about dating and singleness and loneliness. And, like, I was sharing about how I was really lonely.
Yeah.
And I was really struggling with feeling like I don't know, like, with the whole dating situation and being alone and all of this different, I was going through, like, all of that kind of stuff. And being able to have you guys share your perspective and your, like, situations, I think it was also good. Like, I always try to balance my friends between, like, I have my side B friends. Mm-hmm. And I have my friends that are not side B. Because I think for me, it always helps me remember that, first of all, like, having friends, and not just side B versus, like, straight. I think it's also a matter of, like, having friends that are similar to me versus different than me. Mm-hmm. Because the friends that are similar to me, obviously, they get my problems, like, without, my side B friends understand when I say what I'm feeling. They're like, oh, yep, I know. Yeah. I get it.
Yeah.
But then it's also good to have people that maybe don't have the exact same issues as you, because then many times you'll find that you actually do have similar issues, but you didn't think that you did.
Exactly.
And then you realize, wow, okay.
It's like just because our sexualities are different doesn't mean that emotionally it's not. It's very similar.
Yeah. It's actually interesting because in the past week, it's only been 1 week, but I decided a while ago that I don't really have a lot of straight male friends. So I need more straight males in my life, straight men in my life. And so I started going to a men's group, and really for the purpose of, I went to a men's group where it was all straight guys. At least to my knowledge. To my knowledge, it's all straight men. But what I'm saying with all of that is, I feel like those places, they're difficult, first of all, because, you're hearing people dating, but, and having things that maybe necessarily I don't, can't have. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, it's really good to then be able to hear people say what they're wrestling through and what they're going through and be like, oh, wow, you know what? Like, I deal with that. And so it's not that uncommon, you know? I think even for me, that's been something good to hear from married couples, because I'll hear sometimes married couples feel like, I'm so alone. And I'm like, oh, thank God.
It's like marriage is not the end all.
Marriage is not the end. And I hope you guys don't take away from this that, like, I'm always feeling lonely. No, I'm not always feeling lonely, but I do feel lonely at times.
And marriage is great.
And marriage is great. But I feel like sometimes we always feel like we have to put our best face forward even in our communities. Like, oh, my community's great and we have no problems, or my life is great, we have no problems. And it's like, if we really open up about all of our problems, we'd probably realize that everyone else is having similar things.
Yeah.
So I think that's something very important that we many times don't talk about, and we forget the importance of that.
And I think that's with you, that's something that you try to do, is you definitely try to be open about your story, and you definitely try to be like, hey, I'm dealing with this, or I'm struggling with this, so that people that are struggling with similar things or that are going through similar things, they can be like, oh, there's someone that I can identify with because I thought that I was by myself in this.
Yeah.
And so I think that's important also, is just being open and vulnerable, and just reaching that place where you're like, you know what, maybe nobody understands, but I'm still going to put myself out there in the hope that someone does, because like, then it's all of a sudden that's what grows community, is being vulnerable and being like, this is what I'm struggling with.
Yeah.
And then you never know who's going to come out and be like, me too.
Exactly. Really. And to kind of, like, bring a little bit more practicality to this whole entire conversation, I wanted to give a few points that I've kind of learned related to biological family and friendships that, and please chime in anything that you're thinking of. But I wanted to kind of give thoughts of, like, if you are a side B person and or anyone really, honestly, and you are wanting a better relationship with your biological family, or you're like, wow, like, I want, a friend group, that is close, I think that the first thing that I've really learned through my experience that I would love for people to know is kind of like what I was saying before, is with With family, I think a lot of it is patience and courage.
Yes.
You have to have the patience to know that they're not going to change their views in a day or a year.
No.
That's a long haul commitment.
Yes. That's why you're family, because you're stuck together
Because you're
forever.
stuck together forever. But I think it also takes courage of saying, I can see what my family needs to work on, and I'm going to be the person to push it.
Yeah.
And many times pushing it doesn't mean telling people, hey, we need to do this, but doing it yourself. Like, for instance, I feel my family needs to be more open about our issues. All right, I'm going to be more open.
Mm-hmm.
I feel we're not good at dealing with conflict. All right, I'm going to be the one to deal with conflict.
Yeah.
You're not going to be popular at first.
No.
But I feel like that's where over time, and with that patience then, that courage and that patience can really many times help us. And I'm not saying that it's going to work in every situation.
Mm-hmm.
Every situation is very different. And sadly, there's a lot of sad people that are LGBT people in general that they just don't even have a relationship with their families.
Yeah.
And in those cases, it's a completely different situation of really just trying to restore that relationship. And that takes both sides to try and restore it. But I do want to encourage people with that is like, if your relationship with your biological family is not necessarily what you would love for it to be, just not to lose hope, but just to stick to that patience and stick to that courage that things can change but it's just, you have to understand that it's not going to happen in a day.
And one point that I also want to touch on is that if you're also someone that is a family member of someone that's struggling with something, whether it's LGBT issues or, depression or just anything in general, then I think the first thing is to seek to understand, not wait for your turn to speak. And not just judge them for their differences, but just be like, okay, this person is different than I am.
Yeah.
How can I understand them better? What are the questions that I can ask, rather than being like, no, you're wrong, you're going to hell.
Yeah.
Be open and just ask those questions and open your heart to just listen and be like, because I feel like a lot of times you're going to start understanding them more, and you're going to open up that connection and that relationship so much more by just being like, by seeking to understand, and that person is going to start realizing that they can trust you with their problems, and they're going to start opening up to you more, and then you've got that open communication going, which is key in these kind of relationships.
I think that's really important. I would say the other thing that I wanted to kind of touch on with your friend groups, the one thing I've learned from our friend group is, I think for so long I was always searching for friends that were like me.
Yeah.
And obviously you have to have common interests. Obviously you have to have things in common, but whether that's like I really was only searching for other men, or I was really only searching for people with the exact same interests as me, or the same personality as me. And while each of our friends I have something in common with in some way, there's a lot of things that I don't share in common.
Yeah.
But I think that that's what makes our friendship so rich and beautiful, is because each of us brings something so different.
Yes.
So different to the table. And you're like, wow, okay, so you're doing that. I'm here, you're there. And so what I would love to encourage people is, sometimes the friends that you need in your life may not be always the people who are exactly like you or have so much in common with you. Sometimes a group of friends is made rich when there's so much different in between every person.
Yeah.
And so I would just say, don't cut that off. Don't cut off those opportunities. Because honestly, like, if we hadn't all just been brought together, like, I don't think I would have been friends with someone like Daly.
No.
Or... no, I love you, Daly. I love you, Daly. Please don't hate me. But I'm just saying is that, like, I never would have approached her to be friends.
Like, on our own, we never would have been friends.
I never would have approached, I don't know if I would have approached Ryan. Yeah. On our own. I mean, until we found out that we had the same birthday. And then we were like, hey, we have something in common.
So I feel like I mean, part of it too is, I mean, being in the same places with them a lot. So, because kind of similar with me, Daly and Ryan were, and Ed.
Ed too, yeah.
Ed, like, me and Ed are completely different. But, like, you know, being in those same areas, and especially with Daly in particular, I mean, I've told her this many times, so it's not like this is anything new. And I want to also preface with, I love you, Daly. But when we were first getting to know each other, I was like, I don't, like, who is this person? Why does she keep wanting to, like, be my friend? We're so different. I don't necessarily, see myself being friends with someone like her. But then it was just kind of over time, God was like, I think you should actually get to know her. And then I'd be like, no, God, I don't want to. But God was still like, but yeah, I really think you should get to know her. And so finally, eventually, I just started trying to ask her questions. Again, asking questions and opening up that line of communication. And then all of a sudden, 3 years later, now she's one of my best friends. And I couldn't imagine my life without her. And I think that that's also important. It's just, like you said, be open to people that are different from you, because I think that with just even like the six of us, the sensational six, it's like we're all so different. Like, I'm so different from Amanda. I'm very different from Ryan and you and Ed. But at the same time, it's like when I'm dealing with something, usually someone's perspective, it may be different than mine, but it's what I need in that moment. And it's like our strengths and weaknesses round each other out. And so it's like we're this one big, strong group together because we've opened up and we have that connection.
And that's the good thing about the other perspectives, because if everyone in your friend group has your same perspective, then going to them,
or if you all have the same strengths and weaknesses.
Exactly. Then it's like you're not helping each other,
right,
in some ways. So I think that's, I don't know. I like these. I just wanted to be able to share on this topic because I felt like it was something that was really important, that many times in this conversation of, well, maybe not in general conversations, but at least when I was looking over my episode list for this season, I was like, this is really missing. First of all, that you guys could get to know me, and second of all, to be able to talk about biological family and adopted family and just general friendship that may not be living together, but what that looks like, and in between people of the same sex and in between people of the opposite sex.
Yeah.
And so I want to thank you so much for being here.
I want to thank you for having me on.
Yes.
This has been fun.
Right?
Yes.
This is not going to be the last time.
No.
It
better not be.
Is there anything else you wanted to share right before we go?
I think, I kind of just want to also maybe touch on the whole friendship thing just again, because I feel so strongly about it. It's been something where it's like something that's been so impactful in my life over the last 3 years, because I don't necessarily have, like my immediate family is really great. Like, I love my immediate family. We've been through a lot of struggles together, and so we're just kind of a very tight-knit group. Like, my sisters are just 4 of the most important people in my life. But outside of that, outside of my family, like my sisters and I have always kind of felt like the black sheep in our family. And so being able to have that friendship and have like the community that we have in the Sensational Six has just been so impactful in my life and has really pushed me way past boundaries that I had for myself and got me out of my comfort zone. And I think one of the quotes that I really love is like, show me your 5 closest friends and I'll show you your future. And I think that's so true, because I surrounded myself with 5 amazing people, actually 6 amazing people counting Haley, because Haley is like amazing. I love her. She's like a fireball. It's awesome. But surrounding myself with such good people that are constantly encouraging me and constantly pushing me forward, even when I'm like in moments where I'm like, I don't want to do anything. I just want to say, screw it all. Leave me alone. I'm just going to become a hermit somewhere in Colorado and live with 50 dogs.
Not cats.
and 70 cats. But also it's just like having those people that are constantly encouraging me and constantly pushing me to be better. Like, I don't think that I ever would have moved to Colombia for those 6 months if I didn't have you guys telling me, like, I think this would be a really great experience, because I had just recently lost my job and I was down in the dumps thinking that I would only be good for retail for the rest of my life, and being like, oh, well, I guess I'll just move up the management chain in a retail shop. But then, like, having you guys be like, no, you have so much more gifts and so much more potential inside of you. You need to, get out of your comfort zone. And so that really, like, was the catalyst that I think has given me a lot of courage and strength and everything. So I would just really, really strongly encourage you guys to find a good community of friends that just push you forward and encourage you.
That is great. Well, thank you, everyone, for listening. And for those of you who are going to be at Revoice, we cannot wait to see you there.
And thank you for putting up with my straight woman self.
Thank you for putting up with my gay self.
Oh, yes. All the time.
So be on the lookout for our next episode, which will be released on June 12th. Oh my goodness. I'm so excited.
Wow.
And it's going to be a
exciting.
really great one. It'll be our first post Revoice episode. So be on the lookout for that, and we'll talk to you soon.